And there's a very close connection now between the things that are said about Churchill in particular and the things that are done. We seem to live in an age where what a Noam Chomsky or somebody like that gets wrong one day ends up being taken to the streets pretty swiftly afterwards. I want to give an example. In Edmonton, Canada in 2021, the life-size statue of Winston Churchill was, again, the second time, was assaulted by protesters throwing red paint over him. That's perhaps less important than what the local officials said. The local mayor of Edmonton said in response to this attack on the statue of Churchill, "I don't know the intent behind the vandalism, but I know historical monuments and sculptures here and elsewhere are at the heart of an emotional debate regarding what legacies and stories we venerate as a society. I believe there are more productive ways to move society along towards a more inclusive and uplifting future."
Sounds a bit like that mayor in Jaws, doesn't he? Yes, I mean, statues, I think, are the beginning of it. Schools have been changing their names. There's a school in California that doesn't want to be named after George Washington, of all people. You know, statues have been attacked, including that of Abraham Lincoln. We've had, it seems that there can't be a demonstration in Parliament Square any longer without them the police either boarding up the statue of Winston Churchill or it being attacked and vandalised in some way. The same Black Lives Matter demo that attacked Churchill, or tried to attack Churchill, also vandalised the cenotaph.
Yeah.
So
the cenotaph to the dead.
The cenotaph to the dead in the First World War and the Second World War, the national memorial to the dead, so I think it's there is obviously nothing if you don't venerate that. What do you venerate, frankly? And if you, and they clearly don't venerate that, and so this is a proper sort of cultural struggle that's taking place. But the good thing is, and we see this more and more pleasingly, I'm certainly not a defeatist in the struggle. I think we could win this struggle so long as ordinary people are given their say. And in Sheffield recently, ordinary people voted to keep a statue there. Whenever people have local referenda on these things, they don't want the statue of Sir Francis Drake or Robert Baden-Powell taken down because they're of course, part of the street furniture that they've grown up with, but also they are able, all intelligent people, are able to contextualise greatness. And because somebody was great enough to have a statue put up to them, that doesn't mean that you can't contextualise it. But it doesn't. The idea of just pulling it down is an absurdity, in my view.
I was very moved in the summer of 2020 in the wake of the BLM George Floyd protests that spilled from America to Britain and other countries. I was very moved by the fact that the morning after the cenotaph and other national memorials, including the statue to Winston Churchill in Parliament Square, were vandalised, assaulted, graffitied over, that a group of young men and women voluntarily came out the next morning and started scrubbing the graffiti off. Now, one of the protesters, who was obviously in support of the graffiti, said to these young men and women, who turned out to have come from, they were part of the household cavalry, were doing this in their spare time. One person who obviously supported the graffitiing said, "Oh, look at you, your precious memorials. You can't even allow this BLM graffiti to be up even for a day because of your precious memorials." And the taunting tone in that struck me.
Yes.
Because, of course, they are precious. The monuments to the dead of the two world wars are very precious to the British people because they commemorate our ancestors. They commemorate the people who gave their lives so that we can be free. Assaulting the statue of Winston Churchill, again, seems to hit right at the heart of us. Perhaps this is, and we'll get on to this, perhaps that's the point, but But it seems clear that for the British public, this is the heart of us. Churchill is somehow at the very centre of our sense of ourselves as a people, and as a people who did good in the world.
Precisely, yes, and who ultimately, of course, as I mentioned earlier, kept Britain in the war against the Nazis, which ultimately was successful. And so, you know, if you even for one moment consider what would happen to, well, let's take the Black Lives Matter campaign. What would have happened to black people if the Nazis had won the Second World War? I have to say, it would have been a jolly sight more unpleasant than what would have happened to people like you and me, Douglas. You know, the way in which the Nazis treated non-Aryan people was genuinely genocidal. And so if anyone should be happy and proud and pleased that Winston Churchill did what he did, it should in fact probably be the Black Lives Matter supporters, even more than people like us.